Okay, everybody, it is great to be here one more time today. And my name is Gary Fowler, and I'm the CEO, president, and founder of GSD, Get You Done Venture Studios. I am proud to have my very good friend, Bill Reichert, here today. Bill is a legend in Silicon Valley. You know, he's a Harvard undergrad, Stanford MBA, and he's one of the good guys. He's with Pegasus, which is a $1.7 billion fund that Bill's a partner in, and he was also the partner of Guy Kawasaki and Garage Technology Ventures. He's been very, very kind and worked with us in all kinds of different ways, in advisory roles, friend roles, etc. He's incredibly helpful and incredibly insightful. He also has written a book recently called Getting to Wow, and we're going to talk about that today. And we're going to, if you have any questions, you can send them in chat to the audience out there. We've got about 60 people. Okay, let's get started. So Bill, you know, so we've known each other in all kinds of different ways. And, you know, let's talk about, you know, where we are today in terms of the market. You know, we get these questions almost every day. What's happened? Are people still getting funded? I know Pegasus is, you know, incredibly active. But where is the market today, and what do you see?
Yeah, so I hear my colleagues in the venture community sort of crying the sky is falling, and you know, the RIP and all this stuff that I think is insane. There is so much money in the world that is looking for valuable innovation. That it's you know, if you are an entrepreneur and you've got a company with a compelling value proposition, I just don't think it's any harder to raise funding than it was before. The valuation numbers may be different. The irrational exuberance is certainly gone, but there is a ton of money out there looking for compelling investment opportunities. So I wouldn't be wringing my hands and grabbing my, you know, pulling out my hair, worried about the, you know, the world coming to an end or some, you know, horrific sort of downturn. But of course, you know, you've got to be realistic about things like valuations, and it is certainly going to take longer to convince people to write checks. So it's not a fundamental change in the market. It is a shift that, frankly, you know, we think is healthy for the market. But you know, I certainly would not panic if I'm an entrepreneur, and I would not. You know, I would not be afraid that somehow this is the end of the road for the whole venture capital community. So, I mean, there are a number of things that you want to change in terms of, you know, sort of the way you go out there from before, because of this mood change that you have to address. But, you know, happy to talk about that.
Yeah, no, and you know, when you say it takes a while from the time you meet a VC to the time you get funded, how long does it take? I mean, and I'm not saying just an average. Is it still like 3 to 6 months, or what's realistic?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's realistic to be thinking in terms of 3 to 6 months. It's a very different world than it used to be, which has made it, I think, in some ways better for entrepreneurs. What has happened, thanks to our dear friends at Y Combinator, is that entrepreneurs have been given tools to raise money in smaller tranches over time, and that's the safe note, which is a change from the, you know, olden days when when you had to, you know, herd all of the cats around the table, get everyone to sort of simultaneously agree to write a check. And so I think that's, that shift in the nature of seed stage fundraising, I think has benefited entrepreneurs, and it will continue to some extent. But so the good news is that you can get some initial funds in a couple of months, but the problem is to round out an entire round might take 5, 6, 7, 8 months. So that's the challenge for entrepreneurs. The bad news side of this is that in the new world, entrepreneurs are almost always raising money, and that's I know really hard on entrepreneurs. It used to be, you raised a round, you could go work for 12 to 18 months, and then you come back and raise another round. Now, unfortunately, you're pretty much continuously raising money in that, seed stage of evolution for entrepreneurs. So I'm sorry about that, but that is part of the new reality.
Well, how do they get the work done though? Because I know when we were raising money for Eva, right, it was like you're always raising money, but how do you get focused on your business? I mean, does the business suffer because you're in that consistent money raising mode?
Yeah, it's just another sales, it's just another sales activity. And so it's not your only sales activity, but it is another sales activity. And, to your point, obviously it's a distractor from quote unquote getting your work done. But the flip side of it is that I think the best entrepreneurs are good at making sure, excuse me, the best entrepreneurs are good at making sure that every conversation counts. And what that means is that at a minimum, you learn something valuable from every conversation in terms of useful feedback or perspective. Ideally, from every conversation, you get a lead. You get some form of lead, either, potentially a customer, but at least some other smart person, possibly somebody you're going to hire, possibly someone who's an expert who can help you get to someplace you want to go, whether that's, on the development side in terms of recruiting engineering or getting support on that side, or on the revenue generation side in terms of marketing or sales and business development. So it's part of building your network of relationships that is the ecosystem you need to build to scale a company long term. So yes, it's a pain in the ass, but it is, sort of continuously tempering your sword to make it sharper and better, not just for the fundraising side, but also for the business side of what you're up to. So that's the recommendation to entrepreneurs is don't think of fundraising as somehow a separate, isolated, stovepiped aspect of your world. Fundraising is part of developing the network that is your valuable ecosystem for scaling your company in the future. So I think that's the other side of that coin.
So what do you look for when somebody, is it a pitch deck that they send to you, Bill? Is it a recommendation from friends? What's the secret sauce, the magic of why you look at a company? Is it just because of the revenue numbers? Is it because of recommendation? What do you look for?
Yeah. Well, so I should be clear that Pegasus Tech Ventures is different than your sort of plain vanilla Sand Hill Road venture capital firm, in that what Pegasus does is we work with multinational corporations to find emerging technologies that are of strategic value to them. Strategic value either in that they represent a next generation technology that can be an important aspect of their future lines of business, or they represent a disruptive technology that that threatens their business, that's going to require them to make a transition into sort of a next generation technology of some sort. So unlike Sandhill Road VCs, who, if you were talking to a Sandhill Road VC, what they would typically say is, well, we never bother with companies where we don't get a warm introduction, where, and they talk about, sort of how they're overwhelmed with deal flow coming in because entrepreneurs are desperate to raise money from them. Pegasus is very different because we have a charter to go find specific technologies in specific sectors.
Mm-hmm.
So we sit down with each of our corporate partners. So we have over 30 corporate partners. And for each of those corporate partners, we're running a separate dedicated fund. So
Mm-hmm.
we have over 30 separate funds as
Mm-hmm.
Pegasus. It's a crazy, crazy model. I'll tell you. And we're now over $2 billion of assets under management. So updating the number we sent you before.
Wow, congratulations. That's great. Wow, that's fantastic.
So, yeah, and that keeps growing because, again, in spite of all the noise out there, corporations have a hair on fire problem, which is they've got to figure out how to innovate. And, if they don't innovate, they're not going to grow. If they don't grow, they're going to die. And so multinational corporations have a hair on fire problem, and they are continuously looking for innovation. And so the shift in kind of the corporate venture capital world versus the way it used to be is an important transition in the venture world. And we can touch on that later. But back to your original question, what do we look for? So first of all, unlike Sandhill Road, we don't sit back and wait for companies to be introduced to us. Mm-hmm. So what we do is we go out and we seek out the best company on the planet doing addressing a problem or an opportunity or a sector or a technology or a need that is strategic to one of our corporate partners. Mm-hmm. So we are very, very outbound oriented. We're not waiting for a warm introduction. Now, mm-hmm. Having said that, I strongly encourage every entrepreneur to develop that capability, to have referenceable, friends who can connect them to investors. I'm not saying that warm introductions are no longer important or valuable. But in terms of Pegasus, what we are looking for are companies that have a clear and compelling value proposition that addresses a target sector that we are going after. Now, with over 30 funds and 30 corporate partners, there's hardly any sector that we're not targeting. So, with each of our corporate partners, we'll have 5, 6, 7 sector targets that are strategic to them. A lot of them are sort of enterprise, commercial, industrial oriented, because mm-hmm. our partners tend to be multinational corporations, most of whom are making something. Many of whom, but the minority are software oriented. Most of them are manufacturing oriented. So that means that we've got to cover an incredibly broad gamut of technologies on the software and on the hardware side. On the sort of traditional IT and communication side, as well as life science, health tech, med tech, as well as material science, clean tech, climate tech, and sort of all the various combinations of the above. So we're very, very, very broader than most VCs in terms of the breadth of sectors that mm-hmm. we go after. But again, the hardest thing for us, and apparently for entrepreneurs, is to get across their clear and compelling value proposition quickly and efficiently. And so, we see there's so many companies doing almost everything on the planet now. So it's the amazing thing about the venture ecosystem is that pretty much every sector of our world is now open to entrepreneurial innovation and, attack by startups, right? So it's hard to think of a sector that is not being addressed by entrepreneurs and startups. And so, there is, and what that means is pick a topic, any topic. Here's a corner world that probably it'd be interesting to see if anybody here does this. So one of the dimensions of the world that we go after are coatings. Coatings? Are you kidding me? Coatings, right? So, so an important part of advancing technology is, this multi-billion-dollar niche, which is what materials in our world need coatings? I mean, I can't possibly name them all, but certainly in electronics, electronics products need coatings. They need coatings to prevent shorts, to I don't know if you guys know what solder mask is, right? And so that green coating on printed circuit boards serves an important function for maintaining the electronic integrity, electrical integrity of that circuit board. And there's another coating to make sure that if there's humidity or moisture or heat or dust or whatever, that it doesn't foul your electronics. And now you've got the automobile industry, which has become an electronics company industry, right? So now, a huge, aspect of automobile manufacturing is actually electronics. And putting electronics into a, semi truck, right? That's a brutal environment, not to mention military, right? So coatings happen to be a really tough, competitive, important aspect, of our economy, right? So, I mean, okay. So, and then there are different niches within coatings. We are looking for companies that have developed a coating that performs at a higher level and is cheaper, faster, better to apply than the current generation of coatings. Okay, I mean, so if you've got that,
Okay, so startups, if you have that, Bill's a good person to talk to. So, Bill, so I have a question for you. What if you look at over those 30 companies you're dealing with today? So coatings, you say coatings is hot. What else is hot right now?
I mean, all I'm saying is that everything is open and is requirement. Almost everything is a requirement for us. So,
is there anything in particular, if you'd say, what's the top 3 areas that you're interested in across the 30 companies? Are there any particular technologies that could be interesting for you?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of overlap across our corporate network around, several areas. Not necessarily in scale, but one that certainly has been hot, if we want to use the hot term, right? One that's certainly hot is now smart health. Smart health, thanks in part to COVID, and which I think accelerated the whole smart health domain. We have a number of our corporate partners are interested in a range of technologies that apply to the healthcare sector, from the sort of administrative end of delivering healthcare.
Mhm.
Smart health is the thesis there is that we want to push more and more healthcare, both monitoring and delivery, out of the hospital and to lower cost modalities, such as delivering in the home, right? And so both monitoring and delivering healthcare where people are, rather than forcing them to come to clinics and hospitals and emergency rooms, that's a huge opportunity out there. And then within that, you've got a whole range of technologies around, measuring and diagnosing what's going on. So that, we think of traditionally in the wearable sense, but now you've got more and more non-invasive technologies that are able to measure and monitor your health and alert when there's an issue there, down to specific therapeutics, which increasingly we can deliver outside of a hospital setting, down to then getting down to the biotech level of discovering new drugs, discovering new sort of mechanics or methods of action, doing and that gets down to things like AI and modeling molecules. We've got a quantum software company that is modeling molecular interactions to identify more active molecules for drug and therapeutic delivery, right? And then down into the genomic space, right? And so there's this incredible span of technologies and opportunities in smart health. So that's one big fat sector. Another sector that just continues to be critically important is smart factory, right? Very few jobs in the manufacturing world are actually roboticized, are actually automated. That has been, historically, automation and robotics has under-delivered for the world. So we have these great examples of of smart factories and dark factories, but boy, it's a tiny fraction of the world. And then now, thanks to geopolitics, right? Thanks to geopolitics, there's a lot of interest in figuring out, frankly, how do we limit our dependency on China, right? So, and so corporations are looking for ways to either reshore or nearshore or diversify their supply chains. And a key part of that is next generation factories that are more efficient and productive to enable, high quality, low cost production without, massive numbers of cheap labor. So, that's, partly because of COVID again, partly because of geopolitics. There's tremendous energy in that whole domain of smart factories, smart manufacturing. And then, we also see, the third, and I can keep going, but there's also a very strong interest in clean tech, climate tech, broadly defined. And so again, because our partners are multinational corporations, they've all got some degree of corporate social responsibility obligation, which now translates into, ESG, environment, sustainability, governance obligation, which is part of their strategic investment innovation program. And so we are looking at a whole array of technologies to, reduce carbon impact for corporations. And, there's a whole set of technologies to make, operations, industrial operations, manufacturing, et cetera, have a lower carbon footprint, inherently. And then there's the whole other set of the world, which is you're not ever going to get to zero carbon footprint sort of internally. So you're going to have to go to the offset world. And so that whole offset world of, how can I offset my carbon footprint by supporting or investing in other technologies. So we've invested in a number of companies in that space. Some, carbon sequestration, some carbon capture, some solar renewable, some, energy efficiency, electric motors. So we're investing in that sector as well. And then, the overlay on all of that, which is, I know it's a topic near and dear to you, Gary, is the whole topic of the evolution of artificial intelligence and its applicability across obviously all of these sectors, right? And so again, AI has become so broad and so differentiated that the term AI almost doesn't have a lot of meaning anymore. But it's almost always cooked in somewhere in the software part of our investments, even if they're primarily hardware type investments. So that's kind of what we're looking at now, and there's a lot of very interesting sort of point sectors that we think are interesting in terms of transportation mobility and how that's evolving, and high performance computing and how that's evolving. So it's a really just crazy interesting world out there in terms of what's going on. So
no, I agree. And so any of those areas you're interested in, you've got a $2 billion fund today. And what are some of the companies that come out that they would that the audience would know that you've invested in that have had successful exits?
Successful exits. So yeah, I guess I don't know. I mean, so Pegasus is now a little over 10 years old. I think, we've had, what's that? God dang, it's 16 or 18 IPOs, in that, and then 30 or so acquisitions. But we were we were late investors in Airbnb. We were late-ish investors in Coinbase. Interesting. We were, middling investors in Bird. We were middling investors in 23andMe. We were very early investors in Rigetti, a quantum computer company that went public. And then in terms of other IPOs, we've been investors in several companies in Japan and in Southeast Asia that have gone public that are less well known in this market. We have a very strong network in Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Southeast Asia, and South Asia. For historic reasons, Pegasus as a global investor has had a lot of strength in those regions. We have offices in those regions. We also have an office in Europe. We don't have any Europe IPOs. Shame on me. We don't have any Europe IPOs at this point yet. So we'll see how that goes. And we're investors in SpaceX, which is not yet a public company.
No, but they're doing a great job, Bill.
Right.
Valuation.
Yeah, right. Where we have over 250 investments over the years, and so we have a very, very broad base. I wouldn't say the most interesting companies, but we've got because there's hardly any company on the planet that's more interesting than SpaceX, I got to admit. Having said that, and I think I told you this, Gary, that in all my years of investing, the SpaceX site visit was probably one of the coolest site visits I've ever done as as a VC. As cool as so many of my beloved technology companies are, that was a pretty cool site visit. It's interesting comparison. Most of our biotech companies, a site visit to a biotech company, you see some test tubes and some people in lab coats, but okay. It's very cool. God bless. But to actually see a rocket take off, that was very cool.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love hearing that. Love hearing it. So Bill, listen, we're actually, I wanted to talk about WOW, but we're coming over the time now. I'd like to schedule another session to get WOW. We've had some interesting questions during this time. We've got about 100 participants today here, and once we put this online, there'll be a lot more than that. So, in summary, what's your prediction for the next year? What's going to happen in the investment community, and what's the best way to people to contact you if they've got something that may fit one of those models that you?
Yeah. So just to, get that out of the way, let me put it, it's Bill at pegasusventures.com is the best way to contact me. I'm not good at LinkedIn, and I've maxed out my 30,000. I love LinkedIn, God bless LinkedIn, but I'm not good at LinkedIn email messaging or any of that stuff. In terms of predictions going forward, one of the things that is going to be an interesting challenge is that, because of this crazy upside down macroeconomic market, in terms of interest rates and institutional investors, there are going to be a lot of venture capital firms that are going to be struggling this year in terms of raising their next fund. Mm-hmm. And so, what I'm hearing from my friends on the institutional side is that the institutional investors are now out of kilter in terms of their allocation numbers. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of a really inside baseball aspect to the venture capital world. But what a lot of entrepreneurs don't fully appreciate is that VCs have the same issue entrepreneurs have. They've got to go raise money on a regular basis. So they've got to go out, VCs have got to go out and pitch their next fund. Mm-hmm. And right now, the institutionals, because the public markets have come down so much, they are over-allocated. They're over-allocated to venture capital. If you just think about, percentages, numerators, and denominators. And so what I'm hearing on the institutional side is the institutionals are saying no more new funds and reduced allocation to our current funds going forward. So you're going to see a lot of the newer, smaller, VCs. Smaller is now anything under 500 million, which is crazy. But you're going to see, a lot of these newer, smaller VCs struggling because they're not sure where their next fund is coming from. Mm-hmm. And so they're all of a sudden going to be playing a game that an entrepreneur coined, I don't know if he gets credit for this or not, but one of my entrepreneurs at one point talked about the way VCs behave as, quote, giving you the shits.
Mhm.
Okay, Bill, what's that mean? Shits is show high interest, then stall.
Mhm.
So this is from the entrepreneur perspective, the obnoxious VC game of showing high interest and then stalling. And I agree. I mean, it's very painful for entrepreneurs, but what you're going to see is a lot more VCs giving entrepreneurs the shits
Mhm.
because they're not sure how much money they're going to have available for, investing going forward. So,
Mhm.
and we're already seeing it. We're already seeing the traditional venture capital world slowing down. And so the traditional, plain vanilla venture capital guys, they are absolutely slowing down because of what's going on in the institutional market. And so that shows up in these, PwC money tree type statistics, and it gives all these entrepreneurs this panic attack, because that's what's going on the institutional side. On the corporate side, we're not seeing any slowdown at all.
Mhm.
Which, is unusual in the historic sense. Historically, when the macroeconomic environment turned somewhat negative, it was the corporations who backed out first.
Mhm.
And now you're seeing the opposite happen, which is really interesting, because the corporates, they are long-term investors. They know, I mean, they're focused on 2030 and beyond. VCs, this is a hugely ironic statement. The VCs are very short-term oriented because
Interesting.
they have to worry about their next fund. And so, a lot of them are used to raising a new fund every 2 years. And now that 2-year window is getting scary for them.
Mhm.
And so the really strange flip in the venture world is that the corporates are the ones that have the long-term perspective. The institutionals are now the ones with the short-term perspective. And so it's kind of, for me, having been on the entrepreneur side, dealing with both, and then on the VC side as a traditional venture capitalist and now a corporate strategic investor, it's been so interesting watching the evolution of the ecosystem.
And you're sure glad you made the flip
Boy, no, I mean,
at the right time.
right, and so with 30 plus separate funds, we had our earliest, first 3 funds are now pretty old, but most of our funds still have a lot of legs. And so it's and we have, we keep on adding new funds to the family. So that was so you'll see in these statistics, you'll see this bizarre slowdown in the number of deals and the total dollar amount and all of that stuff. You're going to see that in the charts. But what that won't show you is this underlying urgency that, to still find compelling innovations that are of strategic value to someone in the world.
Interesting. No, that's fantastic. I also, I've been meeting with folks from some ultra high net worth family offices, and he painted a picture for me. He said, the cars between $75,000 and $200,000 have gone down in value, but when you have, he told me, he said, I just bought a Bugatti Chiron for $2.9 million. And he said, and an Enzo Ferrari, he's got 40 cars. And he said, cars are going up in price in the range we have. He said, not a G-Wagon. And so the point is, these people, these ultra high net worth families are still very active in terms of investing. The key is, how do you get to them, right? And having that having those sources is really important. And then the other part is the relationships, Bill. At the network, sometimes we downplay how important to have a friendly relationship and having friends and bringing deals to them and figuring out what works and what doesn't work. So that's important. So for all those startups out there, this is so Pegasus has got a $2 billion fund. They're actively investing. If you fit into one of those buckets that Bill talked about today, I strongly suggest you reach out to him at bill@pegasusventures.com. He's a really good person. I can tell you from a friend side and a business side, he's extraordinary. And so if you got something interesting, reach out to him. Bill, it would be great to have you back again to do Getting to Wow. We didn't have a chance, unfortunately, to talk about it much today. And I know it's a topic that's near and dear to your heart, besides writing an incredible book. And we'd love to have you back to discuss that. To all of you out there, thank you for tuning one more time on How to Build a Unicorn. My name is Gary Fowler, and I am your host. Stay happy, stay safe, and stay healthy. Tune in again for another exciting edition. Hope to see you all soon. And take care. Thanks, Bill, for taking time out of your schedule. We really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, and Happy New Year to everyone, and may the odds be always in your favor. Thank you much. Good job.
Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.
Okay.